Hi, I'm Reggie Ponder, the Real Critic, and this is the Real Critics Network. And I'm with my co-host Katia Woods, and happy just to have another episode to kind of talk about things. And if you don't know, this is two critics with two opinions and one mission. And that mission is where dialogue engages, it educates, and it entertains, and occasionally it escalates. We might have a
Mhm.
little skirmish here or there. But anyway, but we still like each other. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
We might
we
have a
too
little,
old to do anything else. We got to think
we
about
might.
steak.
So as you know, I'm the Real Critic. You can catch me on indigo.com. You can also catch me at vocalo.org and some other places. But I'm doing work. I'm putting in work. Katya, what about you?
Well, you can catch me at the Philadelphia Tribune, the Sacramento Observer, Wednesdays, on Word, Reality Check with Tanya Pendleton, and on couplesocial.com. You know, like true Black people, we're like Jamaicans. We got 18 jobs.
We do. And so our first segment is the segment called What's on Our Mind, where we give 30 seconds or around 30 seconds about something that's on our mind. And what's on my mind, I'm actually going to kick it off. But what's on my mind is Dave Chappelle's monologue for SNL. Dave Chappelle has this way of being funny, and he ain't being funny because the stuff that he's talking about, he's bringing it to you raw, and he's talking about it the way people talk about it. Now, there's some stuff in there that he was trying to be funny about, like, giving a wink eye about making jokes about the fire. It might be a little bit too early. But the other stuff that he's talking about in terms of just his worldview and the way in which he looks at the world and the way in which the world comes to the aid of all the people who are affected by the fires, but and have empathy for them, but might not have empathy for the people in Palestine. I just love the way that this guy is able to connect world events and how he thinks about stuff. Just a brilliant guy. And if you haven't checked it out, it's on YouTube, it's on snl.com, wherever. Check out Dave Chappelle's monologue for SNL. It was a completely genius. That's my what's on my mind. What you got, Katya?
Oh, I hate to say it. I know I talked about TikTok last week, but it was the 20 out just to get people um outraged. Do you know what I mean? And we should have known when the guy who owns the thing was showing up with the other tech bros at the thing that we were not going to talk about on Martin Luther King Day. But it's like I told people, I said, what is the lesson out of this, right? You shouldn't put your eggs all in one basket. Like, we don't upload this podcast only on, Apple Podcasts. It's on various different avenues, whatever you like to enjoy. Because some people like Spotify, some people like Apple, some people like Google Play. And we want you to listen to us, and we're not going to say, well, you can only listen to us over here. So I hope that especially creatives of color understood this is just a way to get you to go to what the thing that you own, and that they develop something that they own. So the next time TikTok or a new TikTok or Snapchat or whatever, whatever the thing is, I know we all can't keep up, that you don't feel as though like, oh, my money's gonna stop. That's what I want us to take away from. You can still do this other stuff, but the people that weren't panicking, like I know Straw Hat Goofy gets a lot of, because he started out on TikTok as a film critic, and he's gotten a lot of opportunities, that used to go to journalists, but my boy was smart enough to utilize all those followers and turn it into get a podcast deal that he owns. So he was good. So to me, it's like use a platform and turn it into something that you own so you can continue to eat. Because let me tell you, baby, some of y'all were panicking. That check,
Yeah,
well, like I do this full time. You were like, ooh, these bills are going to look a little light at the beginning of the month. So that is my takeaway. Once again, make sure when you do go viral or get opportunities that you turn it. And same thing with Keith Lee. Keith Lee, I want to tell you right now, I said this for a minute. He probably has a show coming up because he said he has an announcement to make where he takes what he does on TikTok and probably will do it, put it into like a half hour, maybe an hour format on a bigger platform.
Yeah, I love your point, Conti, again, this is really supposed to be what's on your mind, but I do want to make a comment about
Sure.
this. Is that there are a couple of ways to look at this. One is that when you don't have a place that you own and you're trying to build something, you look for the best way in which you can do it. So I'm not faulting you guys who decide to use TikTok, Twitter, whatever to try to do that. I think what Katya is saying though is that as much as you can, see if you can try to parlay that into something that you own. Because when it's not something you own, you're at the whim of those people. And that makes so much sense. That's the truth for if you have a 9 to 5 job. It's just the truth. If you don't own it, you're always susceptible to the whims of the people who do own it. So I think that's a good thought as to how you do that. But we do understand that not everybody is going to be able to parlay their thing into something huge and big. And so, you know, just be cognizant that whenever you can, try to make sure that you got that you using your smarts to put it someplace else. Yeah, I think that's a smart thing to do. Hey, that's my 2 cents on that. All right, so we're gonna move into our movies for today, and the first movie that we have, I'm actually going to kick it off, and it is the movie Complete Unknown. And this movie is directed by James Mangold, and it is the biographical drama that chronicles the early years of Bob Dylan's career. Now, I will tell you is that I'm not a Bob Dylan, like I can't tell you a Bob Dylan song, even though once they play a few songs, oh yeah, I forgot he wrote that. But I've always heard that Bob Dylan was a great songwriter. And so I've always respected Bob Dylan, even though his music wasn't really my music. This is set in the 60s, and the film follows Dylan's rise from an unknown 19-year-old arriving in New York City to become a folk music icon. It delves into the relationships with his fellow musicians, his controversial transition to electric music. It's really funny when you look at that in the movie. Boy, people were mad with him. I'm talking about they like, how can you move from that traditional stuff to something different? The main cast in this is Timothy Chalamet. He plays Bob Dylan. He portrays the legendary singer songwriter during his formative years. There's Fanning as Sylvie Russo, and that's Dylan's girlfriend. And they show her and him on and off, that type of thing. There's Monica Barbaro as Joan Baez, and Joan Baez. Hopefully, you know who Joan Baez is, and it shows their relationship as well as some of their collaborations. And then there's Edward Norton as Pete Seeger, who's the influential folk musician, and he's kind of like a mentor figure as well. I also should mention that there's Boy Holbrook, who plays Johnny Cash, and I like his portrayal of Johnny Cash in the thing. So what's to like in this particular film? For me, there's two things that really stand out. The first is Timothy Chalamet's performance. He is really good, and I don't mean just really good. You probably hear this all the time, but I forgot that I was watching Timothy be Bob Dylan. I was like, is that really Bob Dylan? I just thought that everything he brought to that, from the singing, from the voice, from the mannerisms, I bought into that. So that's one of the things I like. But the other thing that I like is that when you do these things, you have to find a way to bring the music to the forefront, because that's what he was known for. Yeah, you want to know some of this other stuff, and they did a good job of reminding us of the music that he did, the music he wrote, and all of that worked for me. Now, there's some things that didn't work for me, but I'm gonna stop there so I can let Katya jump in.
Um, okay, I'm gonna go with you and say I thought Timothy did a good job as Bob Dylan. I'm not too sure. I mean, I like Monica as an actress, but I'm not too sure she got the full essence of Joan Baez. Do you know what I mean? Um, Ed Norton is always really, really good. And obviously, the music is a forefront. And I don't know about you, but that's where things started going a little bit south for me. I feel, in my opinion, that this movie, if you are our kids' age, and our kids are in their 20s, and unless they are via nostalgia or exposure Bob Dylan fans, I don't think they walk away from understanding the relevance and the importance of who Bob Dylan was for our parents' generation when they were younger, in the same age. I don't think they will understand why people were so offended, or in today's terminology, his fan base felt he sold out when he plugged in. That's my issue. Like, if you are somebody who's older or who was raised by that generation, you look at it and go, oh, okay, I my parents talked about this. Okay, I know my parents really liked this, and why this music spoke because of the politics, everything that was going on in the country. It's also, I think the other backdrop is New York. It was a different city. This city that these kids go to, right? I try to explain to my daughter Times Square, how it's still odd for me to go to Times Square and it's got like all this, looks clean, and it's all this family oriented and people taking selfies. I'm always like, if you would have told me younger self that, I would have said, you crazy. Ain't nobody coming down here. Ain't nobody Disney's not coming down here. Look around. This place is a cesspool, right? So I think that's what it's missing. It's not making that connection. It's making these kids assume, right? It's like they watch it and then they have to go watch a YouTube video or a separate documentary or go read the book in order to fully understand why this was a big deal. Because I think watching it, they're gonna like it because Timothy is in it. They're gonna like it because, they think there's some cool parts, but to them it's just gonna be a moment, not like a watershed moment. To me, it's kind of like, the best way I can equate it to this generation or to people our age is when hip hop left New York, when all of a sudden the West Coast came in, when Atlanta became the center of like hip hop, and New York is like considered the old dinosaur, right? And now you had this war in between hip hop where New York is like, well, you wouldn't have none of it if it wasn't for us. So how can you say we're irrelevant? That's the best modern term that I can put into
And so so
the what
so so
just
so
missing.
that's interesting. That's interesting to me because I think your first point in terms of them understanding what Bob Dylan meant to the time period and culture. I could see that. I could see that where you say that they might not have understood the gravity of who Bob Dylan was. I think they tried to craft that out in the movie, but I could see your point of view here. Where I don't agree with you is that they don't see about his switch to the electronic music. I think they show that pretty clearly. Is that and the fact that you mentioned hip hop is that I look at all these different genres where we just talk about Beyonce today. Is Beyonce trying to go into country music? People are having a conniption. She doesn't belong there. Why would she switch? So I believe that part of it, people will understand Bob Dylan kind of saying, "Well, I want to try something else," and getting a lot of flack for it. I think they'll understand that.
I think they showed it, but I'm not sure if you are from this generation Z that you understand. Like, I think also for us, music was, not to say that there aren't projects that mean something to this generation, but it's so easily accessible, right? Whereas before, you had to make a pilgrimage to the record store, you had to go to certain places, whereas Bob wasn't necessarily going to Milwaukee, right? So a reason a lot of kids move to New York is to be a part of that cultural zeitgeist, whether it was music, art in general, acting, whatever the thing is, or just the need to be around a city where it was a little bit more open, and it's particularly that neighborhood, the village, right? Because I always say New York, well, you and I both probably agree on this. New York is way more than Manhattan. Like, leave the Upper East Side. There's way more to it, right?
Look,
And
I lived in the village for a minute, so
yes, so
yeah.
you know it is. It's its own little character. What those coffee shops, jazz clubs, all those different things, which sadly are no longer exist. They're
Not,
all so
it's not the same. It to your
right.
point, is it's not the same New York. When I spent a full year in New York, the streets were abuzz with street vendors and all that, and that's different today. But back to the back to the movie. I think that they be able, that they will be able to extrapolate. There's two things that bothered me about this film, and the first is that I didn't feel that they did a great job of showcasing or letting us get behind who the supporting characters were. Is
That part.
that more that I want to know about him and his wife? How did they start the festival and so on and so forth? You get Joan Baez. I mean, she's in and out. They got this relationship, but how did they really navigate that? And then the girlfriend, that one was curious to me. I want to know more about that particular relationship as well, because he kept leaving, kept coming back. I mean, I wanted to interview her and say, well, wait a minute, let me talk to you a little bit about that a little bit more. And now some people have been talking about the historical accuracy, and I always hear this when we look at these biographical films, that somebody says, well, it's not exactly accurate. Because I wasn't there, this is one of those things, and I'm going to have to leave to somebody who was actually there. And then sometimes it's funny because you weren't actually there with Dylan and Baez. So were you in the room when it happened? I don't think so. But I understand people who want it to be historically accurate as it can be. We do know that many times when we see these kind of biographies, they keep a little bit out because they don't want to totally tear down this person who's become an icon and a hero. And I think sometimes that hurts the film overall when you say, hey, these are things that I'm not going to touch or I'm not going to talk about. So
Well, also the girl that was she was based on the real life girlfriend. That was not her name. The woman that she was based on was Susie Rotolo, right? The girl Sylvia Russo was based on Susie Rotolo, who was on the cover of Dylan's Rolling Stone, that album cover. So that part. So because a woman passed, I'm wondering if there was, you know how it be. You can't the family, the estate may have been like,
yeah, no,
um,
you're not going to use her name, and if you do, I'm going to sue.
so
If
they're
if
like,
you
we're gonna get and rename her, but she was on the cover of that Freewheelin' Bob Dylan. And I think also the other part too is it reminds us, like, would Bob Dylan today get signed? And the answer is no, because they'll be like, well, how he gonna look on social media, how he gonna look on videos. And I think people sometimes get so hung up that Bob doesn't have like what we want to call a traditional singing voice, as nice as I can put it. But that's not Bob's mission. Bob's mission is to give you these songs where he is a great observationist of the
a
world.
storyteller, a
He is,
storyteller.
yeah,
He
and
he really was a storyteller, and I think if he doesn't get signed, I think he probably would be a social media star. Though I
I
think that
I think he would be exactly what he did back then. He would hit a nerve with college kids. He would hit a nerve with college kids. He would be doing those. I don't know if people still do that, but he would still be. He would be like a hit on college radio. He would be doing college tours. I don't know. This Bob may be not living in this New York. He may be living in Portland, but he would be Like, I think he is one of those people, if he were born today, he would be okay. He would make his own
lane.
little
He
way.
would create his own lane, and there'd be a place for him. And the fact that he was thought of as a great lyricist and great writer is that other people would be singing his stuff.
And
You
they
know,
and they did, and you know what? Bob being the smart man that he is, the Rolling Stones finally recorded Rolling Stone, and they said Bob said, "Absolutely, the number one rock band in the world. I'll take that check."
I'll totally take that check. Go ahead and do that. Well, I like this movie. It's up for a Critics' Choice Award for Best Picture. That's one of the reasons that we're talking about it. The Critics' Choice. I'm gonna say this a number of times in this particular episode. The Critics' Choice Awards are February the 7th. It's on a Friday. Chelsea Handler will be the host, and it is at 6 p.m. Central Time. I always say Central because I'm in Chicago, but that means 7 p.m. Eastern Time and 4 p.m. whatever Pacific Time. So I like this movie. I think that it was worthy, if nothing else, for maybe not Best Picture, but if nothing else, Timothy's performance, I think, definitely pulled this film into Best Picture contention. Did you like this one or not,
I think
Katya?
it's entertaining. It's just like for me, it was like 75% there.
Okay, all right. Well, there you have it. Well, we're gonna move into. I mean, there you have it. We're gonna move into our next movie, and I'm gonna not let. I'm gonna ask Katya to kind of kick this one off, and this is Nickel Boys, which is directed by Ramel Ross, and it's Ramell. Tell us about this one, Katya.
Well, this is a heartbreaking movie. And I know I like Ramel, and I said this to Ramel, but he was like, "Well, I want you to see it more than once." I said, "Ramel, I don't know about that. Maybe parts of it, and it doesn't mean it's not, but it's based on the book by Colson Whitehead, the same man who wrote The Underground Railroad." And I know we like Colson, we need you to find some joy in your life because all the stuff is super, super heavy, right? And it is based on a real school. Now, again, this was during the segregation. So there was a white component for these, I want to say, what is it? Like juvenile delinquents, right? And then there was a black component of the school. And naturally, the white kids got treated better and the black kids got inferior food, living conditions, and were treated and were both all the boys were abused, right? But it was a lot worse for the black kids. And it stars two up and coming um actors, and it's really about the story of these two boys, right? One was on his way, he had a full future, and Elroy, and he gets caught up. He was on his way to college when he is picked up by a hitchhiker who has a stolen car, and so he's guilty about association. The other boy is there already, and it's not quite clear what exactly he did, but apparently he had been in and out of the home. And it's their friend, the story, and helps us understand the horror show that is at that school, and also how this friendship enables them to survive the horror, right?
And
um
let me ask you this, Katya. When you mention these two gentlemen, did you find their how did you find their chemistry and the way in which they played off each other?
well, I thought it was stellar. I thought that this movie does not work if we don't buy into their friendship, right? Because they're
No,
polar
I totally agree.
because Turner and Elwood don't work if the two actors in real life didn't like each other and didn't have chemistry. And oddly enough, they built chemistry. They filmed this down south by having Waffle House Monday. So they would go to the Waffle House, them and a couple of the crew, and they would go to the Waffle House and they would try, and they would not try, but they would kiki and just have moments of fun, just being young, fun black men dealing with working in this very, very heavy storyline. Do you know what I mean?
Now you were able to interview them, and you did an article about these
Did.
gentlemen.
And
And what was the general focus of that article?
the focus was to show that, community, in spite of the way we as Black people continue to survive horror shows is community and finding pockets of joy within the worst of the worst, right? And I
Okay.
think that's the strength of this movie. They found moments to dream and to look up into the sky. They found moments in each other to talk about. And I think for Turner, because he didn't have anybody, right? We can't talk about this film without speaking about the great Aunt Janae Ellis Taylor, who plays Elwood's grandmother. And when Turner meets her, he's like, Elwood, you've got a grandmother. You've got love. That's the other thing Turner tries to say to Elwood, you have somebody in this world that gives a damn about you. That
Yeah.
honestly, you know what I mean? That is fighting for you. And there's a story that within her, you know what I mean? And I talked to her about that. But getting back to your question, it's the love. There's something that on Elwood that drew Turner to say, you know what, when he got to that school, I gotta help this kid, because if I don't help this kid, he's not gonna make it through day one for the last a year or a minute, right? And something about Elwood said, I can trust this kid, out of
Yeah.
everybody there, you know what I mean?
I
And
do. The reason I asked you a question about the chemistry is that that's one thing that you do not doubt in this film. You don't doubt that these two actors had a chemistry that made the relationship between Elmwood and Turner absolutely come through. And then when you throw in Ingenue Ellis, she brings I don't even know the word for it, because it's not the glue, because it's more than that, than what she brings to this role. And it it really does elevate the actors, elevate the way in which Rommel decided to present this film. For me, he said in New York, I put some poetry on it. And if you know anything about poetry, I used to consider myself a poet until I saw some real poets, right? Because I'm writing this like, let me talk to Katya because I'm right here. I wish that whatever, some old lame rhyme, right? And be like, oh, okay, whatever. But when you see these poets, these poets, you'd be like, oh my goodness, maybe I'm not a poet. But what I'll tell you is that I think the type of poetry that Rommel put on this is the type of poetry that makes this less of a mainstream film, that makes it less where people will say to themselves, I know folks who will just not go and check this out for a couple of reasons. One, it's not as straightforward as you think. Two, the content is tough to think about what these guys went through. And then three, does it really convey the all of the horrors of this of what these young men went through? I think this is a fascinating film. I love that Rommel had a creative vision, but I will tell you, for me, I think that creative vision definitely gets in the way of making this like one of the best movies of the year.
can we talk about? I read something today in Huffington Post, and I want to say this. I'm not going to say the critic's name because I don't want people um, bombarding this young lady, because she's entitled to her opinion, and that's her right. However, I have a problem, me, Katya, when I hear Black critics say this movie was not made for Black people. If it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. We are not a monolith, and we are further than just North America and the continent. It's a matter of, how can I put this politely? We got to stop doing that. That's what I'm trying to say. If something doesn't work for you, don't say it wasn't made for Black people when the person who wrote the daggone thing was Black. The person that directed it wrote it was black, and the people that made all the creative decisions are black. So again, if it's something doesn't work for you, you have every right to say that. But don't say it wasn't made for black people, because what you're saying, that all of us that did like it who happen to be black, are we then not black?
Yeah, yeah. I
That
really feel.
bothers me so much. And again, I'm
I,
saying you don't, if you don't like it, like for instance, if it doesn't work for you all the way, that's your right. And that's perfectly okay. But the answer why it didn't work for you, it's not to say because it wasn't made. And here's the thing is, Ramel is very clear and very articulate when he talks about why he made the creative choices that he made, because he wanted you to be in the shoes of these young men, and that's why he made the camera choices. Number two, the reason why he didn't show up, for instance, Elwood getting his butt beat, and the other young man, is because he's like, I'm not here to do trauma porn, right? We can convey the horror show, what's going on there, without seeing us stripped. And if nothing to see them getting beat, then you got to go examine that in therapy or with your higher power.
yeah, I feel you on that. I feel you. I feel you on that, Katya. But here's my piece on it. Is that maybe this author could have said it differently, because I think the way in which I said is that I said I don't think that it's for mainstream for a lot of people. And could have said it, probably could have said it differently. But I think what they're saying is that I know a number of folks who went to see this and was like, oh, okay, who's the audience for this? And I think sometimes when we get to be so creative, and we're creatives because we're in that field as well. When we get to be so creative, sometimes the we do the art and the message gets buried within that. And it's just true with art. That's just true with art. And I'm
That is a fair criticism, but I will push back on that and say, if Damien Chazelle, when he made Babylon, and I did not like the movie, I'm going to be honest with you,
I
not,
did not like it.
but why is it when we have a white director and they get to take all types of, same my issue with the brutalists and queer, they all take creative license, and that is encouraged, that is applauded, they get rewarded for that by getting to make 16 movies like that, right, where they get to do whatever it is in their brain. But when it comes to black directors or black people, they have to make a movie that works for everybody. They can't just make the movie that they have in their, how can I say this, in their heart, in their brain, right? And again, that's being an artist. Sometimes it works across the board, and sometimes you throw paint against the wall and everybody digs it, and sometimes you throw paint against the wall and only three people dig it. That's the
I'm with you.
that's the nature of the game. And again, it doesn't mean you are obligated to like it because somebody is black, but please can we stop pigeonholing black creatives and having to be answering the question of racism, of understanding and anything? Because while I read the book, this is what I wanted to make. And if you want this movie, this is how I'm going to make it. And I wish more of us would stand on it, because too often what I hear from our people with the director's cut, whatever fancy title you want to put it on. Again, I absolutely understand where you're coming from, Reggie. I understand the people that sat in that theater and were like, well, it was a little confusing to me with the cinematography. I don't know if this was beautiful. I don't know if I was able to take that leap with him. But as a creative, as a person that fights also to have my vision, my word, my creativity be represented the way that I want to represent it without compromise, I respect Ramel going and saying, I'm making this film. And that's what I read for Colston. And if it works for you, it works for you. If it don't, it
And
don't.
this is what I love.
I
This
mean,
is what I love. So this is where we absolutely 100% agree. I firstly I like the movie in overall. I
it's
like the
not
movie
a bad
overall.
movie. It's a tough watch. It's a
The,
really tough watch.
firstly, I want to make it clear while I'm giving these criticisms, I like the movie overall, but
Yeah,
I love more than the movie is the way in which he decided to say this is how I'm going to do it. And
exactly.
I love that in him. I, I had to ask him when he said I put some poetry into it. I was like, well, I don't understand what you mean. Explain that to me when you say you put some poetry into it. And he is was very very clear in the way in which he wants to approach it. So I applaud him for that, and I hope that many folks will do what he does. I my the angst that I have is that when you get these kind of films that become critically acclaimed, you want people to see it. You do want people to
I'm
see
gonna
it.
tell you one better. I think this is the type of film that's gonna make the Criterion Closet. I hope they get somebody good to write the forward. And here's the other thing that I respected about this movie. The choices that he made. This is what again, like I really my mind is blown when people say this, who did he make this for? The Anjane character, when you see her in that restaurant and she is kneeling and she cuts herself and how those people are eating and she became invisible. This is a woman that is prideful, that is smart, that is a caretaker, that is out into the world. And as a black woman, I appreciated this because this is how black women are seen even today. We're invisible. Our pain is invisible. Who we are is invisible. And I felt like that scene was so powerful if everybody's eating and this woman and nobody looked when she broke that glass and nobody was like, are you okay? Because they don't care. And that is the truth. And I'm not sure a white director would have had the audacity and the balls
I
to do something
I
like
know that I know that that's the case that they wouldn't. I still think that, and we'll have to wrap this one up. I still think that that doesn't all the good things that are inside of that movie doesn't address the fact that it might not appeal to the broadest audience. And when I saw it in New York, I'm just telling you, it, it was a
that. Here's my
wide
question, and we can wrap it up. Is there something in us that we have been programmed to believe that we should only receive art in a certain way? Because I do think we also, as Black people,
yes.
when we say
The
things like,
answer to that is yes. Is
and
that
then say
we
things like,
our
"This isn't Black," or "I
our
this
our palate
is that."
our palate we have been it's just like what a lot of us are doing today in terms of trying to get eat some more healthier food. Our palate has been we've been fed a certain type of food, which I like by the way, and now I got to switch it up because it's not all of it's not good for me. It's the same thing in movies, is that we can't just watch the same thing over and over and over again. We do need to expand our palate. That's why I love with a capital L what Romel brought to the table.
More than that.
But
More of us burn the
I'd be
building.
remiss not to say that there
Yeah.
was some things that it didn't hit.
And that's okay. But I wish more of us would be like, you know what? And if it means I may have to sell some fish plates in order for me to make the movie that I want to make, instead of you sitting there in the theater and being like, I sold out, I compromised to get my thing on the screen. It's not what I envisioned. It is not what I went to work for. Or I had to take on a white partner that doesn't quite understand my vision in order to get this done. I listen, I applaud it. I want more of us to be like, I'm gonna make this, and if it's only the people in New York, LA, or Portland, whatever, where the artsy fartsies live, then it is. I mean, listen, I don't agree with Talib Kweli on a lot of things, but I do agree with him. You either going to be Drake or you're going to be me. Drake means that the majority are going to love you. Me means that I have 100K that ride with me, whether I put out a mixtape or put up a full album, but that 100K has kept the lights on in my house. And maybe Ramel Ross is the director for that 100K.
Abs,
And he
abs,
can
ab,
make his
make
art and make a living.
and,
And that's
and
okay.
as long as he can continue to make a living, look, I'm applauding him and I'm good with him. So hey, we're gonna wrap this one up. And I like this movie. I hope people will go see it. When you see it, you will have to have a critical eye, and I think that you'll also have to have some patience because it is a different type of movie. He comes at this one differently, and so I would recommend that you check this one out yourself, Katu.
100%. Watch art that makes you feel uncomfortable sometimes and pushes you to digest. It's like Reggie said, you don't only have to eat fish fried. It's okay to eat a broiled or in a fish stew sometimes. Okay.
Dang! I need that fried fish. Boy, I like my perch. But anyway, or some catfish. All right. So we finished with that, and we get to go into our final segment. And this final segment is called the Rant and Rave. And my rant and rave is all about the snubs, and I'm gonna talk about black people that got snubbed.
That's
They got they got
enough.
snubbed
You can do it.
at the Oscars. So there is a glaring, and we're gonna go by categories. We're gonna do like maybe 4 categories, and then we're gonna, because there's too many categories when we look at these awards, right? The first category for me is Best Picture, and so I'm gonna announce to you the nominees for Best Picture for an Oscar. That's Honora, The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Dune, Amelia Perez, I'm Still Here, Nickel Boys, The Substance, and Wicked. Now I want to contrast that list with the Critics' Choice list. It is A Complete Unknown, Honora, The Brutalist, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Amelia Perez, Nickel Boys, Sing Sing, The Substance, and Wicked. There is no way that the Academy shouldn't have Sing Sing on their list. I don't care what movie you move out of there. You can move out I'm Still Here. You can move out Dune Part 2. You can move out Honora, The Brutalist. I don't care. Sing Sing, when I look at movies and we talk about movies that move you, there's no doubt you cannot watch this movie and not be moved. This was a snub of major proportions. I'm flabbergasted. So that's what I'm going to talk about. That's my thought on Best Picture. Katya.
Do you know what my thought on Best Picture is? The international branch has spoken. LA, particularly, no longer rules the Academy. This is why you have I'm Still Here in Best Picture. This is why you got Amelia Perez in Best Picture. It started with Roma, and then you have Parasite. Now you've got this. The international branch, it sounds horrible, saw what was going on in LA, saw that this voting was extended, and not that they were happy. I want to be clear. Nobody's happy what's happening in LA, so don't be hitting us up with that. But they said, hold up. And I said this on TikTok. The person, once she won Golden Globe at Golden Globe, Fernanda Torres, one thing I'm always going to give my people in Brazil, we ride with our own like nobody's business. At the celebration of Latin cinema, in television, she was the highest trending, above Zoe. She was trending. All the media picked up the log line. So when she won a Golden Globe, and it was like, shh, all the trades that weren't paying attention to this woman swooped in and started doing interviews, started putting her in a magazine. Digital covers started coming out. The whole cast and crew, everything. Shout out to the team at Sony Classic. Saw that LA was burning because I was supposed to go to an event for her, right? And again, nobody's happy, and fires are still going on. So definitely keep them in your prayers and do your part and support some of these GoFundMe's. They put her on a plane and said she did live with Kelly and Mark. She did the evening show. She did Sirius XM. She was out here plus in the fresh like the candidate that she did. And it resulted in an Oscar nomination and that movie getting into 2 additional categories. And because what it forced people to do is, what is this film? Why is it so important? And why did these 100 members of the Golden Globes vote for this woman over the Kate Winslets, the usual suspects, as I like to call them?
Now
And
I think that that's a good.
that people watched it, and with the longer time, and also when you meet Fernanda, she's incredibly funny, personable. She also speaks very well English. They were like, we got to go see this movie that this woman is in, and it got more eyes on a film. Now,
And what's the name? And what's the name of that movie that this woman is in?
Ainda Estou Aqui in Portuguese, I'm Still Here, which is a brilliant film, and it's in theaters right now, and it's not 6 days long. But here's the issue on I wish, and I don't know if Bleecker Street has the money. I wish they would have tried at Marianne Jean Baptiste out like that. They would have taken advantage of this longer line, because what it did is the
Yeah,
media.
so I have to jump in. I have to jump in. But hold on. I have to jump in because when you say that, people don't know what movie you're talking about.
Oh, Hard
And
Truth. Hard Truth, which is also a really, really good movie. That's who I voted for on my ballot for Secret. Excuse me, not Secret Santa. It's Critics' Choice. Wrong holiday. But here's the point that I'm making to you is this is what Tiana Taylor didn't do. You gotta take advantage of every little bit when you are not the big name in the mainstream, Black people, and you gotta campaign like you're running for office. The best candidate don't always win the best performance because some of these actors don't know how to politic. And this woman
or they and the don't know is not saying that they don't want to, because the don't know also includes that they don't know.
Well, yeah,
Sometimes you don't.
it helps. Listen, and I said to shut. That's why I said shout out to the team at Sony Classics that was like, we got this win. The same people that might have said no, they're going to say yes. And I do think it helps to have an awards team that can lean into your
Yeah,
talent, strength.
it,
Do you know what I mean?
there's
Unfortunately,
no.
that's why I said this. I don't think Bleecker Street has that kind of money to be able to get Marianne Jean Baptiste
Yeah,
into that. It was up to us, she had a fan club of 50 compared to other people. But also, here's my other thing, Reggie, and you definitely correct me if I'm wrong. There was this article by Variety where they were saying we miss Meryl Streep. I'm like, no, we don't. Meryl Streep has 3 Oscars. She's good. She has gotten the love.
we missed her for what?
At some point, I I don't know, some nonsense. But at some point, Katharine Hepburn took her last bow and went off into the abyss. Meryl Streep is good. Nicole Kidman, you have been loved. Kate Winslet, you have been loved. Even Angelina Jolie. I like that this year you look at some of these names and you go, who that?
All right. Well, I want to get to some more of these names, but let me say this. So let's get to the director. I told you that I'm going to talk about snubs. And so we just got through talking about the movie Nickel Boys, and I don't understand at all how Romel Ross is not, based on all the critical acclaim that this movie got, that he does not make it in here. We get Sean Baker for Honora. Are you kidding me? I can't remember. I think that one of our Sean Edwards said to me that if How to Be a Player was nominated for an Oscar, that's akin to Honora being, you're talking about, or How to Be a Stripper, or a stripper in the, it just doesn't make any sense. Maybe a Bradley Colbert for The Brutalist. You got James Mango for A Complete Unknown. You got Jacques Ardier for Amelia Perez, and that movie I think got 13 Oscar nominations. And then you got The Substance, right? But I thought it was a snub for Romel Ross Nickel Boys, and we got 3 more categories we want to get through. So go ahead. It's on
And I'll
you.
explain it real quick. The DJ has a racism problem. The Directors Guild of America has a racism problem. The direct, if you look at who they give the awards to, which mirrors who gets the award at the Oscar, that's the same nominating body. They have never given the award to a Black director. They just started giving it to women, but they've never nominated a woman, a Black woman. They have a racism problem. Simple as that.
That's
I could have told you Vermel could have made Dune 2. They weren't going to nominate him because he's Black. And it's just, and nobody wants to talk about it. I say it every year. They put all the directors of color into the first time category at the DJ Awards. They have a racism problem. And until we honestly start holding their feet to the fire, before it was sexism, took care of that. Now they still got to overcome. The Academy will be almost 100 years old. You mean to tell me no Black director deserved to win for Best Director?
Well, we're going back. I mean, the country is going back to merit. So no. Anyway,
Don't get me. You'll be here for that.
all
But let's move on.
right, all right. Moving on to our next one. I didn't have too many qualms on actor in a leading role because Coleman Domingo got his nomination, and I'm like, if he didn't get a nomination, we would have had a problem.
Saying
I
that
know you said that you voted uh, for a different movie for best picture, A Hard Truth. For best picture for me, I vote. I'm not even apologizing. I'm just telling people I voted for Sing Sing,
I
and the
did
reason
too.
I
I
vote.
voted for Sing Sing. I voted for Mary Jane for Best Actress.
Okay,
I agree
yeah,
with
I voted for Sing Sing as best picture. I'm gonna tell you, there's no movie this year that moved me like that movie, and that doesn't mean that there weren't movies that were good, but the tiebreaker for me is did it move me, and what Coleman Domingo did in that movie absolutely moved me. I was crying, and I didn't even want to tell anybody. I had tears. That movie really moved me. Now I am not surprised, but I thought that maybe Daniel Craig might have gotten a nomination for Queer or Hugh Grant for Heretic. I thought Hugh Grant did a phenomenal job in Heretic, but I'm not saying that they need to replace any of these other people. But not seeing their names there, I was like, oh, they didn't nominate them for that. Any thoughts on actor in a leading role?
I was surprised, but not surprised that Daniel Craig didn't make the cut because it's like I'm going to be really honest. It's been a long time since I sat through 3 hours worth of movie and walked out of it and told you I have no idea what this movie's about. Majority of us, if you want to talk about a movie that took artistic license and only appealed to, dare I say, queer white men. Even my queer black friends were like, "I'm sorry." It
Right.
wasn't even like it wasn't even sexy.
It wasn't. It was.
It
It was one of those movies that if you didn't scratch your head, I was scratching your head for you because it.
Now
What
I'm trying to figure out, is he the sugar daddy? Does homeboy even like him? Is he just with him to get a free ride? I mean, and then when they ended up in the jungle, I was really lost. So to me, it's like I think it's one of those movies where you admire Daniel going so left after having made the Bond films, but at the same time, we couldn't go all the way on the journey with him. And like I said, is we're all
I like it.
came out and we
I,
were
I,
like,
I,
I don't know what I saw.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm gonna move on to actress in a leading role, and I'm gonna let you start this one off. We got Cynthia Erivo for Wicked. This is the Oscar nominations. We got Carla Sofia Gascon for Amelia Perez, Mickey Madison for Nora, Demi Moore for The Substance, and for Fernanda Torres for I'm Still Here. And do you see any glaring omissions there for yourself?
No, I mean, I would have liked to see Pam make it. I really liked her in The Last Showgirl, but I know it was a far fetched, I know it was a long thing. I like this list. I like that this is new girls that have been in the business a long time and finally got a chance to flex a little bit. I like this list a lot. I was like, come on, Academy. We
You do not like this list because you just got through saying that Marianne John Baptiste should
I
be on this list, and I agree. Is that
I
one of the best one
I
of the best
listen
performances
here.
of the year? This is a snub. I mean,
I would tell you who I would take out. I would take out Mickey Madison because, like you, I call in my review, I called the Norb the poor man soprano. That's what it is. You go watch The Sopranos. I just thought it was an immature. I think Sean Baker makes movies for frat boys. That's who I think he makes movies for. This is the subject matter, right? I didn't like Red Rocket. I don't like this. And that's okay. I mean, he's got his 100K, the people that enjoy his stuff, right? No shade of Mickey Manson, but I would have liked to see Marianne. But other than that, other than her, I'm okay with this list because, again, the usual suspects did make the cut. And that's
so
okay.
I hear you. I hear you. I do want to say this though, is that you used to cover music, and I think you still do occasionally or whatever. And I'm just gonna say of Marianne John Baptiste is that she rocked my world. I'm gonna use some Michael Jackson on this one. She rocked my world. I didn't even love the movie, but I loved her. I
I
mean, and
love
the reason
the
I didn't
movie.
love the movie is because of her. is
Yeah,
that she made me feel so uneasy throughout the whole freaking movie. I was like, no, I wouldn't want her as my wife. No, I wouldn't want her as my mama. No. But she rocked my world.
I
And
loved
the
her.
fact that she,
I loved her so much. I loved the movie. I loved the fact that he had the audacity to make a movie about a woman that is breaking down, cranky as all heck, and he didn't try to fix it. The end. Because I was like, oh, if he tries to make her reformed and have her as a then he gonna ruin the whole thing. But no, he left us with her still being in this thing. And I was like, and also good for her leaning in because I think a lot of actresses would have been like, well, I don't know if I want to play an angry, broken down woman. And man, she said, come on, let's bring it. Let's do it.
she did. Let's move to actor in a supporting role. You go ahead and tell me who. Oh well we got what you for the Oscars, we got Yuri Borisov, we got Kieran Culkin, A Real Pain, we have Edward Norton, A Complete Unknown, Guy Pearce, The Brutalist, and Jeremy Strong, The Apprentice. And when I look at best supporting actor, again, I can't even be more effusive in saying that this was a snub of gigantic proportions to not have Clarence Macklin in this list. Here is it. Firstly, when I saw the movie, I didn't know until the end that he was an actor from the RTA program. I didn't know that, but Clarence Macklin should have gotten a a nomination here. And who would I have taken off this thing? You know, I'm not feeling the Nora in anyway. And and then Apprentice, Jeremy Strong for The Apprentice. Come on, I, whatever. But most people are mad that Denzel Washington wasn't here. I'm mad that Clarence Macklin did not make the list. Katya.
I'm with you. I thought Clarence was really good in this movie. I feel like he is like the heart. He is if Coleman is the heart, Clarence is the soul. Cause he went into this theater group, right, just to pull game, and they were like, "Nah, man, you're not coming in here with that jive. This is our peaceful zen. This we look forward to this. We created this very positive environment. You take that jive turkey somewhere else, right?" And I think, I mean, what I love is remember when we talked about the gentleman that used to play rock, right? And he turned into this amazing act. I think Clarence can be that.
Oh, for sure.
I think Clarence is a very good example of what happens when you go to prison and you then have an opportunity to this theater group gave him a lease on life and it's he's I just want him to get this opportunity to tell more stories because he's
Right.
good. You know how sometimes you just be like, yeah,
Yes.
but I want him to have an
Yes.
opportunity to prove
Yes.
other things. So for me, yes, it's a slight, but I also hope us continue to talk about it makes other people say, yeah, I saw that brother in the movie. I need to put him in my movie, my TV show, and let him really lean into this gift.
Yeah, I got a chance to interview him, and I will tell you that man, he's. I love what you said in terms of he's the soul because his soul just it was light. It was just pure sunshine as to how he saw the world in that way. So let's look at the last category, and the last category is actress in a supporting role, and the Oscars nominated Monica Barbero for Complete Unknown, Ariana Grande for Wicked, Felicity Jones for The Brutalist, Isabella Rossini for Conclave. I liked her role in that, by the way. Zoe 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 Saldana for Emilia Perez. And my slight is, and before I even tell you my slight, a lot of people think that who was snubbed was Aunjanue Ellis Taylor for Nickel Boys. But I will tell you, I thought she was amazing. Really, I did. But I liked her role in Forgiveness. What's shoot? I'm forgetting. Uh,
I know
exhibiting forgiveness, and that would have been the one that I would have nominated her for over Nickel Boys because she was really, really pivotal in that particular film. But anyway, she wasn't my snub. My snub is Danielle Detweiler for the piano lesson. I felt what she brought to that role and how she went toe to toe with John David Washington, that she was magnificent. So that's my snub. What do you think about this category, Katya?
I mean, they don't know what to do with Anjanae. And you know what? She's gonna always be great. And those of us that know. She's gonna be in this Glenn Close category where they're gonna give her Tink Tink Award as like an honorary Oscar later on in life. But she's always gonna be great, and no matter what they do, they can't take away her gifts. Period. Now let's talk about Isabella Rossellini. I like her, but she's the least interesting thing in Conclave, and I believe that the reason she got a nomination is because they went top down. The way I equate it is when you vote Democratic or Republican, you switch the lever and you may really be gun ho for the top ticket and everybody on the bottom benefits. And that's how she ended up in that fight. That woman is in that movie for exactly 30 seconds and does nothing. That movie does not hinge upon anything that she does. That movie is all about the men.
That's true.
And
That's
so
so
to
true.
me, it's
So true.
like, it's not that she's not in best actress. She is like the Jamie Lee Curtis this year. She's not going to win because again, she does not move the storyline forward. You know, I would have been okay if Jamie Lee Curtis this year made it over her for
I
the
agree with I actually agree with you on that.
you know what I mean? Which I think she did a much better performance in than the movie that she got the Tink Tink Award for. But having said that, Isabella Rossellini, love you, amazing career, but baby, you know you don't belong there.
All right, all right. So who? What about my thoughts on Danielle?
Well, here's again, the Academy don't like to see us black folks unless we being, you know, we putting being brought through it. You know, this voting body is still predominantly white, and they don't watch black art made by black people where we are empowered. And most importantly, we talk. This movie got the white man in there as a devil figure. You think they're gonna vote for that? And again, Danielle is gifted. Danielle is amazing, and Danielle has a new movie coming out. People who are talented are going to be talented no matter what. You don't need, and I know it sounds shallow, and we want our people to get there just because this is the Olympics of acting. But no matter what they do and they try to overlook these women, talent is talent, and they're good. And it's up to us to continually mention that they're good and to give them their flowers. And that's why I said what I said on Facebook. The reason why you still need the AFCA awards, ABF honors, um, you know, the Image Awards, and you know, we know the Image Awards got some work to do, is because of things like this. So Danielle, we see you, and she's another one. She's only getting better. She's
Yeah,
only
no, there is no doubt about it. Well, we got to wrap it up. We actually went a little long today, but that's all right. We had a lot to talk about. We're going to get back to talk about the award season. I want to remind you guys, if you're listening to this podcast before February the 7th, the Critics' Choice Awards are happening on at 6 o'clock Central. That means 7 o'clock Eastern. It's hosted by Chelsea Handler. Please check it out. I'm a member of the Critics' Choice Awards. I also need to say is that we did the celebration of Black cinema, and it can be seen right now on Stars. So you can go and check that out as well. And we were there. We were there at the celebration, and it was really something. It was a very good presentation.
and I love
I'm
to
ready.
say that.
Go
I'm
ahead.
just gonna say this when people always ask, who them people that vote on that stuff? Reggie and me. But if the results on the 6th, the 7th don't turn out the way you want to, don't write Reggie and me. We only two people. We you know what I mean? If you like it, absolutely tell us we did a good job. But if you don't like it, you write Critics' Choice. Don't write us. Don't
No,
say
no, no. But if you don't like it, actually, we like to hear from you. We like to hear your point of view. If
write
you don't like what,
Reggie.
but we would like to hear from you.
No,
It's not necessarily that you're complaining about us, but I think it's very similar to what Katya just said, is that we got to continue to talk about the great actors if they don't get the kind of flowers that they should be getting, but we also got to talk about the problems and the things that we need to overcome with some of these major organizations. So if you don't particularly agree, because I don't agree with all of them either, let us know. Hit us up. We'd love to know what you're watching and what you're doing. I'm Reggie Ponder, the Real Critic. You can find me again on at indigo.com, on vocalo.org. That's vocalo.org. And you can also go to my website, which is regieponder.com. Katya.
You can find me at the Philadelphia Tribune, the Sacramento Observer, on Reality Check with Tanya Pendleton, noon on Wednesdays, where we kiki and cut up like this too. And and of course on Couple Soul Show, where you can find, and I'm starting my Sundance coverage live from the living room. And Reggie and I will report back when what's going on in LA and how award season is looking as we go through award season with Critics' Choice, and then we've got the AFCA Awards. Because I know somebody going to say, y'all not going to the Black People Award? Of course we are, because we always going to be with family. And we'll do some pictures. And as always, make sure you subscribe to our podcast if you like what you hear. If you want to hear more from Black critics, make sure you subscribe, you follow, all that good stuff.
Well, that's good. Well, this is the Real Critics Network. Again, 2 critics, 2 opinions, 1 mission, where dialogue engages, educates, entertains, and occasionally escalates. Hey, we had fun. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.